Subscribe to the Legacy of Survival channel right now, because what we're about to unpack is not nostalgia, not myth, and not pop history. This is hard-earned historical reality that modern families urgently need to relearn. If you care about why entire neighborhoods in the 1930s and 1940s could leave doors unlocked during global chaos, while today's alarm-armed homes get hit weekly, you're in the right place. Share this channel with someone who still thinks locks and cameras are the answer, because WWII families understood something deeper. Why wartime households were harder targets despite having fewer locks. The first truth historians often miss is that WWII families lived inside a web of constant observation. Extended families lived close together. Neighbours knew work schedules, ration habits, illnesses and absences, and strangers stood out instantly. A burglar couldn't blend in because social anonymity didn't exist. Today, people can live next to one another for years without knowing names. WWII's households applied passive surveillance long before the term existed. The practical lesson is simple and, well, a bit uncomfortable. Security begins with social integration. Knowing who belongs and who doesn't still deters crime more effectively than any camera. Modern households can apply this by intentionally building visible routines, communicating absences, and recreating shared awareness instead of isolation. Why scarcity created discipline rather than desperation? Contrary to modern belief, rationing didn't increase theft, it reduced it. During WWII, stealing from a family meant stealing from the war effort itself. Communities enforced moral consequences long before legal ones. A thief wasn't just a criminal, they were a liability. This collective mindset mattered. Food, fuel and tools were accounted for carefully, stored intentionally, and distributed with transparency. Nothing was casually left unattended. Today, abundance has bred carelessness. Garages overflow, packages sit unattended, and excess becomes invisible. The application here is not artificial scarcity, but disciplined ownership. WWII. Families knew exactly what they had, where it was, and who was responsible for it. That level of accountability alone prevents loss. You know, predictable routines actually made homes safer back then, not weaker. These days, modern security advice warns us against keeping predictable schedules, but, well, we families really relied on them. Predictability meant that neighbours could notice any deviations straight away. If a door opened at an odd hour or a light flickered unexpectedly, folks would address it immediately. Nowadays, with everyone running on erratic schedules, hardly anyone notices when something's off. Back in the day, households aligned their work, meals and rest around shared communal rhythms. The modern take on this might seem a bit counterintuitive, but it's surprisingly effective. Set up visible, repeatable routines and make sure your trusted neighbours know what to expect. Honestly, predictability only turns into a vulnerability when no one's actually paying attention. Homes in wartime, you see, were designed for defence, but without looking like fortresses. They were modest, sure, but every detail was deliberate. Sightlines were crucial. Windows faced the street, kitchens overlooked the yard, and fences marked boundaries without hiding what was going on. There were simply fewer blind spots. These days, most homes put privacy above visibility, and that, unfortunately, gives criminals perfect places to hide. Back then, families understood that being seen was its own kind of protection. To bring that forward to today, you'd want to trim back anything that blocks the view, improve lighting to reveal movement, not obscure it, and lay out spaces so that everyday activity is naturally observable. During wartime, there was no illusion that the police would arrive in a hurry, you know? Instead, respect and, well, a bit of fear replaced technology as the main deterrents. Families depended on the power of their reputation. Every household knew which homes were resilient, alert, and united. Criminals, just like now, looked for weakness. WWII families made sure to cultivate a reputation for being prepared. Tools were kept in good order, skills were on display, and households projected a sense of readiness. You can do the same thing today without being intimidating, by showing awareness, competence, and connection. Criminals really do steer clear of uncertainty. WWII families, they absolutely embodied that. Why, you might ask, does modern security so often fail where community once succeeded? Well, alarms tend to notify us only after an intrusion has occurred. Cameras, they simply record the loss. Back in the days of the Second World War, systems were designed to prevent intrusion altogether. Security was layered, you see, woven through people, habits, thoughtful design, and a kind of moral enforcement. These days, the failure often comes from outsourcing responsibility. During the war, families truly owned their security, completely. To reclaim that mindset, we need to shift from relying on reactive tools to building a proactive culture. So, talk to your neighbours, coordinate your watchfulness, share the responsibility. Technology should assist our awareness, not replace it. Why were children considered part of security rather than liabilities? Well, children in wartime households acted as observers, messengers, and helpers. They knew the routines, recognized strangers, and reported anything odd without a second thought. Nowadays, our culture tends to isolate children from responsibility, and in doing so removes a powerful layer of awareness. Age-appropriate involvement builds vigilance and continuity, you know. Families during the war trained awareness as a life skill, not as some sort of burden. Why does history keep showing us that social cohesion beats steel and silicon? The historical record is, frankly, quite clear. Communities that know each other tend to resist crime naturally. Families during the Second World War weren't safer just because times were somehow better. They were safer because they were connected, disciplined, visible, and accountable. These principles, well, they're truly timeless. Apply them, and you'll find that modern crime statistics begin to matter a whole lot less. If this deep dive gave you something worth keeping, then I'd encourage you to subscribe to the Legacy of Survival channel, share this with fellow historians and survivalists, and help preserve the lessons that once kept entire generations safe, without ever needing a keypad or a lens.